In the early 90s, Master P had a dream to become one of the greatest rappers to ever live. But to do that, he had to be signed to a major record label who would do all the heavy lifting. However, after a few years in the hip-hop scene, he realized that finding the right record label was just as hard as making the perfect song. So despite having nothing but his dream and entrepreneurial spirit, he decided to start his own record label, and the No Limit Record Shop was formed. But P was a family man, and his partner at the time, Sonya C, turned out to be his first signed artist. Then he got hold of a rapper from Oakland named Dangerous Dame, before also landing a deal with a group known as Cain and Abel. Unfortunately, Dame's first EP with the label, Escape from the Mental Ward, didn't do so well, and the label remained obscure. Even though some of the songs on the album achieved a cult following years later, they were not properly received at the time.
Playing games, enough of the details, cause I got riches. I'm fucking the females, the top-notch bitches, and I'm doing wrong.
For the next 4 years, Master P tried all he could to turn No Limits into a big shot label, but everything he did with his artists just seemed to backfire. He even signed his brothers, Silk the Shocker and C Murder, but still nothing happened. Tired, P decided to move back to his birthplace of New Orleans, Louisiana, while still running his label. He finds and signs new artists like King George, Big Ed, Mystical, Mia X, and Cali G, while still retaining his brothers on board. In 1994, Master P dropped an album through the label titled The Ghetto's Trying to Kill Me, and the success of this album paved the way for the growth of the label. The next year, the label released a compilation album, Down South Hustlers, Bouncin' and Swingin'.
Your neck to get a peep of a true and living goddamn fool. I came to sweep you off your goddamn feet. Now pass that sweet and get back. Looking for action, retaliation, and reaction. This where that shit at. Click clack, that's that.
And this album finally announced No Limits as a label to be taken seriously. P secured a distribution deal with Priority Records, a deal that made sure he retained ownership of master recordings and recording studio, before then releasing Ice Cream Man and the classic tune Ghetto D, which signaled that the rise of No Limit to the top was finally complete.
But fuck that, I'm about to put my soldiers in the game. They tell you how to make crack from cocaine.
The success was exponential. From the mid-90s to the early 2000s, No Limit went on a run of classical album releases, achieving financial and critical success. In 1998 alone, Master P's record label released 23 albums, sold 15 million copies around the world, and made an astounding profit of over $160 million. But this wasn't all. 10 of these albums went platinum, and 11 went gold, an insane record for any label at the time. In fact, No Limit Records was so good at promoting their artists that Silk the Shocker, who many consider as one of the worst rappers ever, went double platinum. Master P wasn't also left out of the party. He released MP The Last Dawn.
I made millions from raps, I couldn't die in scraps. No limit niggas, we scrap. Dog niggas bust caps, I lived the life of a rider, lost that heart.
And not only did this reach the #1 spot on the Billboard 200, the LP also sold 4.5 million copies. In 1998, Snoop Dogg left Death Row and was in search of something new for his career. Away from the violence of Suge Knight and the volatile nature of the label, Snoop was ready to take his career in a new creative direction, but he needed someone to help with that. Snoop Dogg met Master P, and this turned out to be one of the best decisions he made for his career. After Snoop left Death Row, he was working on an album that would diss everyone at his former label. According to Snoop in an interview with Hip Hop DX, he said, "Master P saved my life. I was gonna put an album out called Fuck Death Row, and Mac 10 was gonna give me $1 million to put it out. I would go up there to the office to see Mac 10, and when I would go up there, I would have to pass by Master P's No Limit." After meeting Snoop Dogg, P convinced the rapper not to go ahead with the album. Instead, he offered him a deal and a promise that the rapper would be allowed to explore different styles. At this point, Snoop Dogg couldn't say no, so he signed with No Limit in '98, and this began a new phase of his career.
At ease, I'd like to welcome the newest No Limit soldier, Mr. Snoop D.O.G.G, and he brings to the tank money, power, respect, leadership, street knowledge and wisdom.
Just as promised, Master P allowed Snoop to be himself with his records. And for hip-hop heads, it was a wonderful period. We got The Game Is to Be Sold, Not to Be Told, and it sounded like this.
That's on us, and I trust you won't bust under pressure. And I ain't even trip when you dip with them chips off the dresser.
The next year, Snoop Dogg sounded a little different on No Limit Top Dog, where he remade the classic Cinderfella into Snoopafella.
Once upon a time in the LBC, on the east side off of 21 Street, there lived a young man, Cinderfella's his name. To make it interesting, it's me, Pete Gang.
Snoop would go on to achieve success in other niches, but the following years was the start of a new and difficult chapter for the label. Things couldn't be perfect forever. No Limit had been built as a family business, and while this had held the label together in its earlier years, it was also going to have a hand in its demise. In 1999, Master P and Beats by the Pound, the record label's in-house production team, got into a crazy fight. It all started when Master P and the team of producers disagreed over a potential business opportunity. Master P wanted the label to jump on this opportunity before it vanished, but the producers wanted to hold on for a while, and this frustrated the mogul. So, in one of the meetings with his partners, Master P mentioned that he didn't care if his producers signed the contract or not. This comment was the final straw, and it led to every in-house producer leaving the label. This included Craig B, Moby Dick, KLC, and Odell. And these producers had been in charge of every single or album that came out of the label. To make matters even worse, artists refused to work with other producers and were also angry with Master P for ruining the dynamics of the family business. So without a team of producers to work with and artists no longer loyal to P, No Limit was on the brink of collapse. Later that same year, Mr. Servon and Fiend decided it was time to go independent. Mia X left music in the label to focus on her family, and Cain and Abel had to be dropped because they were right in the middle of a drug investigation. But Master P wasn't going to give up on his label despite the departures. In 2000, 504 Boys attempted to revive the label after their album Goodfellas reached the #2 spot on the Billboard 200.
With my niggas on that block, boy. Open up shop, boy. And they'll kill you for them rocks, boy. Give it $200, now I'ma give you.
Unfortunately, the success did nothing to stop the eventual departure of Mystical, Big Ed, and Ghetto Commission. Snoop Dogg also eventually had to leave after his 3-year contract expired, and Mac was sentenced to 30 years in prison, pretty much kissing his career goodbye. In 2001, the distribution deal with Priority Records ended, and No Limit chose to go with Universal Records in a $10 million distribution deal. Hopeful that this was the start of a new era, Master P renamed the label to The New No Limit. But despite having Lil Romeo, Master P's son, Choppa, 504 Boys, his brother Silk the Shocker, Magi, and Master P himself, the label failed to achieve the success it once enjoyed. Finally, on the 17th of December 2003, the label crumbled and filed for bankruptcy, and Master P had no choice but to sell every catalog. And just like that, one of the most defining labels of the late 90s and early 2000s disappeared into the ground. But despite this premature demise, the label's impact on the music industry remains one of the most significant in the rap game. And it without a doubt shaped Southern hip-hop into what it has become today. While many of us might consider this to be a tragic fall, Master P doesn't see it that way. To him, it was a business that thrived when he needed it to, which is why he had no trouble establishing a new label in 2005, one he called Gutter Music Entertainment. A businessman to the core, Master P and Snoop Dogg even partnered to release the Snoop cereal in 2003. Looks like P has got his eyes only on the bag, and that might have been the reason why No Limit survived for that long.